Voyage.
When I was 54 years old, I walked out of a 20-year career as an elementary school principal, a career I loved. I was estranged from my family. I considered suicide and ultimately transformed my life with the power of psychedelic medicine. I took psilocybin mushrooms and even a little MDMA, and I had an all-time midlife crisis. And as crazy as it might sound, it completely changed my life for the better.
This is Michael.
My last day of work, I knew it was my last day of work, and very few people knew in the school. And these are people I've known, some of whom I've known for almost 20 years. And in my head, I knew that it was the right thing for me to do because I was working in what I felt a very toxic work environment. I was the principal of the school, so I had to answer to people above me who I felt were making decisions that were borderline unethical, hurting the students in my school, the staff in my school, and I was trying to be very protective. And I had a tremendous amount of anger that was built up that was not solely from work. It was also issues I was dealing with personally with my siblings and my parents. And that was over a period of years and years and years. So my mind was just not in a healthy place to manage with what I thought were serious, flawed decision-making by people above me. What my problem was that I was so emotionally tied to the work and so identified as the principal of the school that when things weren't going the way I thought they should, my inner self was just unraveling. And the truth is, I couldn't even do the job anymore. So I walked out. I didn't even wait till the end of the school year. The day actually started like any other day. Most of the people, again, did not know that I was leaving. Somehow by the end of the day, I think it became known, but nobody really said much to me. I actually had a really great day at work that day because I decided to I started sulking in my office, and my secretary very wisely said, I think you need to go out and be among the people of the school. And I always appreciated that little piece of advice because that's what I did. I was in classrooms like I used to always be, and I just enjoyed seeing kids and teachers, and then the day ended and word got out and some people came to say goodbye. They were very confused, not understanding why, because if you work in a school, you usually wait till the end of the school year, and we were about 3 months away from that. Elementary schools are little communities unto themselves, so I started getting text messages from parents who heard rumors that I was leaving, and these are parents who I've known for a long time. I was very active and enjoyed this community. I had a wonderful rapport with the parents and the children, and I remember at the end of the day, because the rumor mill was out, that I sent a quick message on our online communicator that the rumors are true. Today was my last day, and I will send a letter over the weekend explaining the details.
This letter is a lie told to myself and others. Dearest friend, you are receiving the unfiltered version of my announcement reserved for my closest friends and confidants on staff. I'm sending this letter to you via text message to preserve discretion, as you do not know who else is receiving it. What I'm experiencing is not burnout. It's quite the opposite. Burnout is when one does not care anymore. That is not me. The problem is the decision makers don't care. Rather than provide the needed resources to do this job, like an assistant principal or special accommodations for children with special needs, any requests to this nature are ignored, or worse, in response, more resources are taken away. Yesterday was my last day. My last day was perfect. It was no surprise that the news seeped out throughout the school. Sometime yesterday morning, I realized that people knew. You all allowed me to have a typical day. I got one last hug from specific children, visited classrooms, and enjoyed the happy environment. It was a day reminiscent of the days I loved. I noticed a little extra something from your eye contact in the hallway. Several times while passing a colleague, a small hand squeeze provided comfort and love that was good enough for me. I felt respected and loved by the subtlety of the day because you knew it was what I wanted. It was perfect. Leaving you, the people receiving this version of this letter, is the hardest part of this process. I hope that we maintain our friendship. I just won't be your principal anymore. First things first, I'm fine. In fact, I am really great. Those reading this letter know I've struggled with anxiety/depression for most of my life. If that is news to you, it's because it just never came up. But you are someone with whom I'm comfortable sharing. It would be understandable to think that my abrupt departure was due to my mental state. I understand that I am leaving you in a lurch. I do feel guilty about that. There was a time when that would have stopped me. I cannot let that be the case this time. I fear my physical and mental health will regress if I continue working under these conditions. I've never felt so disrespected in my career by the central office. I've learned that being a principled principal is an occupational hazard. This job requires a lot of compromise, but I will not compromise my most vital, fundamental principles, though I have been put in position to. I don't want to retire from the job I love, but I do want to retire from the job it became. I'm fortunate that I can. With more love and gratitude than I can express, Michael. I genuinely thought I was making sound, justified decisions, but I was blind to the reality of my condition. I was in denial of my mental and physical health.
The school district tried to block my email so that I wouldn't do that. And I had a big fight with them about that. I was so angry, I threatened to say, I will just tell them all the reasons why I'm leaving if you don't give me access to email so I can send a thoughtful letter to parents. And they agreed to that, which I find interesting that they did. So there was a lot of things that the upper administration did that made me so angry. And I don't think I'm an angry person. I became someone that I was not happy with. I was in such an unhealthy mental state that I just kind of reacted with a lot of intensity. That intensity came out as anger and probably being, from their perspective, being uncooperative. If I was in a better mindset, maybe years earlier, I certainly could have been. I may not have been so reactive.
This is Michael's wife, Charlotte.
He was somebody that I didn't really recognize anymore. I knew it was so damaging to him, and I knew the prospect of, retiring and financial changes and adjustments were coming. But I also knew that there was no choice because he was really not functioning for a long time, leading to that moment where he told me that he needed to leave. And there were many times before that where he might have shared that he was going to leave, and I knew it was just venting and frustration. But I do remember at that moment when he told me on that day, I knew that it was happening. And I also knew that it needed to happen. And so my thought was just to provide support as best I could and just figure that we would have to navigate not just the financial pieces and retirement issues, but how do we get him better from here? There was a lot of fear about whether he could come back from this. And I did have moments in the weeks and months following that where I remember thinking, how does he get better from this? I just didn't see a way through at times, and it was scary.
Leaving his job didn't help Michael's mental health. If anything, it seemed to worsen it.
So a couple months after I left work, I'm basically spending my day either laying in bed, on my phone, maybe I'm watching movies or TV, I don't even remember. On a nice day, I'd be laying out in my hammock doing nothing and smoking weed. Like, is it 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock? I'd make up this time when I could start. That was my existence for a few months.
Honey, you gotta try to get out of the bed.
I'm going to.
You smell.
I'll shower.
And shave.
Okay.
Between the weed and you, this is freshman year of college all over again. You've barely left this room in 5 days.
I'll get up.
When, though?
In a few minutes.
Why don't you do something for yourself? Go hiking. Take up golf. Start baking your own bread. Anything. This is not healthy.
But I just left.
Weeks ago.
What do you want me to do?
I literally just told you.
I'm going to get up, okay?
I'm not gonna treat you. You wouldn't want that, and it would be inappropriate anyway. But you need to see someone.
And what are they gonna do? More pills?
Did you stop taking yours?
I just need something different.
I was concerned. I was scared. I really was not seeing any way through it because he was completely unproductive and not functioning and, supposed to be retired, which in some sense is supposed to be an exciting transition, but it really wasn't one that he was ready for or wanted. I think if it happened in a different universe where my husband just decided to come home from work and smoke weed, every night, I think the approach might have been different, but I saw that he was depressed. He was not taking care of just basic functions, wearing the same clothing, not showering, the beard was growing. It was scary, and even when we started to talk about it, I don't think he was receptive. I didn't know what to do, to be honest, because my psychologist he didn't need me to be his therapist. And even when I'm maybe trying to provide some sort of intervention, you have to balance it coming from a place of love from a spouse and then being careful not to push the button that says, well, you're not my psychologist. I don't need you to analyze me. So it was very tricky to navigate because I knew things weren't right and I knew it wasn't okay, but I didn't really know how to help him or what to do. It was scary. I feared that he would kill himself. That was a question that I did check in with him frequently. At first it was, no, I'm not. And then it was, I can't promise anything. So I knew we were really getting into very dangerous waters at that point where I wasn't sure. I thought it would just come out maybe through risky behavior, like a car accident, like driving into a pole or something like that wouldn't look like suicide, but in my heart I might have known was suicide. Like that terrified me. And I knew that we were there. That was a fear that I had.
It would take Michael many years to discover the root of his anger and depression.
My identity is not held in the roles that I play as a school principal, as a father, as a husband, because I did identify with it as who I am. When things started going south, it just took me along with it. I want to preface this by being very careful. I do not want my mother, things are much, much better with my mother in a really beautiful way. So I just want to be cautious that she doesn't come across negatively. But in order to tell the story, I'll just do it. I guess I'll just take it from an incident that happened. And I can tell you it was January 31st, 2011. My brother, who lives in Boston, was visiting, and I have two other sisters, and we all decided to go out to dinner that night. And so it was 8 of us. At the time, my oldest son was 14. Everyone has at least one kid. And we're at the table, and my brother and I don't even remember what the comment was about. There was a comment made that questioned something about how we were raising our son. I was like, what? And we kind of bit back a little bit. And then he went on to this whole diatribe about, oh, you don't want to know, don't get me started, blah, 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 blah. And it was a very awkward dinner. After a couple of days, I sent them an email. I'm like, what is going on? I didn't like that you did this, that, whatever. And I explained I was also a little angry about how we were treated in front of other people, especially in public. And then what he wrote back was this incredibly long email about what a horrible person I am, pointing out things that, that happened when we were like 15 years old. I mean, he's at this time, he's 40, 41, and I'm 43, I think. What I'm a terrible son to my parents. I mean, he's never around. He was living away. He doesn't know. It was just a very, very, very hurtful. Later on through the healing, I realized he's dealing with his own stuff. And he grew up with a brother who, meaning me, who was suffering from depression and anxiety. And with that comes maybe some short-temperedness. And maybe there were times I wasn't easy to live with. I don't want to pretend I know what's going on inside his head, but it all stayed inside until this one moment. And it was a ridiculous email in the way it called up stuff when we were younger, and the assumptions that were made about the way other people think and feel, and the way he portrayed me as a son to my parents. It crushed me because we had a decent relationship at the time. Like, I felt like he's been away for a while. We were not always super close, but it was a good relationship. But as the years went on, and there was no healing from that, none. What I started to struggle with was, like, my sisters just didn't know how to deal with it. Every time there was a family gathering, it was as if nothing ever happened, even though there was always this kind of awkwardness about it. And my mom, what ultimately was the core of my hurt was that how my mother didn't do anything didn't do anything to support how hurt I was. Her take on it was her world came crumbling down, is what she told me, because her boys aren't getting along. And she made it about her hurt. My anger just got worse and worse and worse over the years, because I'm like, if my child was hurt, I wouldn't care about my hurt. I would just care about my child. So I placed all these expectations and judgments on my mother that I now realize is unfair, even though on some level it makes sense. My therapist at the time would say, parents do the best they can. I certainly accepted that and I understood it, but it didn't resonate deeply enough for me to forgive my mom. And then when I started thinking about my mom and her issues with her mother, for example, and her mother, because there's a whole story of generational trauma on my mother's side that I had to learn.
Charlotte was in a unique position, not just as Michael's wife, but as a psychologist.
I think as the anger grew, the estrangement got worse and worse, and then just knowing that his brother was coming to visit could trigger a depressive episode, because it brought back all of the feelings of not being supported, not being listened to. Nobody made an effort to mediate, to sit them down and to say, listen, this doesn't work for the family. Let's talk this out and sit here until we figure it out. So there were things that we explicitly asked for people to do for us. I'm a psychologist, but I said to my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law, who is also a psychologist, that I am so emotionally invested in this. My feelings were hurt. as a parent, insulted for him, that I can't help these guys mediate this and come back together as brothers, and we need your help. And it still didn't happen. And so that then became the issue that made us even more hurt and angry than the fact that his brother wrote what he wrote. So that built and festered and built. This was the first time in my life I ever understood what it means to say someone's having an existential crisis. I didn't really understand that. Who are you if you're not the dad, the principal, the good son? Just watching that process happen, I really understood what it meant. His existence was disappearing, and he didn't see anything left.
Michael did come close to suicide, and then something changed.
I remember thinking that I wanted to die, like I was so sure I wanted to die. I want out. I remember Googling if there's any place in the world that had assisted suicide for people with depression, and I couldn't find anything. I remember having a thought cross my mind about maybe buying a gun, and I hate guns. And I just laid there, and I had, for the first time in my life, I had a vision. I literally had a vision. I don't know if my eyes were closed or open. I just remember seeing my 3 kids, one at a time. And at the time, they were 26, 21, and 19. Each one of them kind of had this turn in my mind, like a movie, and they were distraught, absolutely distraught. Pain like I've never seen in their faces before. They were being told I killed myself. And it was the fact that it was a suicide that made their pain so terrible. So I remember just weeping. I was home alone and I was just screaming and crying. And then after I calmed myself down, I asked myself a very lucid question. Can you live feeling this way for the next 30 or 40 years, however long you have left, to prevent your kids ever to experience what I just saw, to experience that pain? It was just obvious that suicide was just so off the table. And then I was just like, well, I might as well try and get better. I went to my doctor, my psychiatrist, and we did a treatment called transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is basically a magnet that you sit in like a dentist chair, and then they put a magnet to this very specific part of the brain. And for 39 days, Monday through Friday, I would go and they would do a magnetic pulse would hit this part of my brain for about 20 minutes. After about 2 weeks of that treatment, I started to feel better. I had moments of clarity. To just describe what TMS does, your brain has what's called the default mode network, and that's the part of your brain that's thinking when you're not doing anything. And for people with depression, the default mode network goes into hyperdrive, and it's all negative thoughts. It's like, oh, well, what if this happens and this happens and this happens? And you just worry about the future, or you're just depressed about something you did in the past. And it was nonstop for me. So one day, after about 2 or 3 weeks on the treatment, I'm in the kitchen and I'm cooking dinner for my family, and a song comes up, and it was a familiar song, and I'm singing along with it. I realized that I can't remember the last time I did that. In the moment, singing along. I'm not a good singer, so I generally don't do it when there's people around, but it was just me. So I went to my doctor. And psychedelic medicine there's a lot of research going on in psychiatry now about how it could be helpful for mental illness. So things like ketamine is available in your doctor's office. And I actually went through ketamine treatments, which was okay. It didn't have a huge impact. So I knew my doctor was into it. And I said, I want to try mushrooms. And she was knowledgeable and been following the research on psychedelics being used for mental health, of which there's been plenty of it. There are schools like Johns Hopkins and NYU that have been doing some great work with it. All I was looking for from her was her blessing, and I got it. I'll try anything. we went down to Baltimore to visit a shaman trained in South America. The indigenous people of South America and Central America and Mexico have been using psilocybin mushrooms for thousands of years to heal. I was in a place where I felt, once I broke the barrier to want to get better, which is part of it, right? Because when you're depressed, you don't even give a shit about getting better. You don't care. You're just depressed. Then I was all about, I want to pursue this. And I was all in. And I connected with this high-tech shaman. We did a lot of stuff over Zoom, and we'll call him Andrew.
Andrew, or Drew, advised Michael to clear his body of antidepressants before using his healing methods, which included frog venom.
You have to be off of all SSRIs for like 6 weeks before you do psilocybin, because it could be a problem, like an overload, a serotonin overload, whatever. The point is, he's like, you got to get that stuff out of your system before you can even do the mushrooms. So I stopped taking the SSRIs, and to really get it out, we're going to do combo. So combo is a frog in South America, and the indigenous people there call it nature's vaccine. And what they do is they scrape the venom. The frog secretes this venom, and they scrape it off the body of they make a paste out of it. My first night with Andrew was in his basement. I had to chug like 2 liters of water. He burns holes in your back with incense and then puts the paste in these holes.
The ritual involved kambo, rapé, and psilocybin. Drew started with rapé, a sacred black powder he blew into each of my nostrils. The impact was immediate and intense. I was shaken to my core, but it brought startling clarity. Then he administered eye drops that burned like acid. I don't know what they were called, but they seared through me. Drew chanted prayers throughout, though I couldn't process what he was saying. I was in a daze, trying to comprehend what I'd gotten myself into. Next, I drank 2 liters of water. And Drew burned small holes into my back with incense and applied kambo, a traditional frog venom. Within minutes, I was hit by waves of nausea and physical agony. I truly thought I might die. Then I remembered something powerful. I had watched Charlotte give birth to our oldest child. I saw the strength and pain she endured, and then chose to do it 2 more times. That memory grounded me. If she could do that, I could survive this. After about 20 minutes, the purge was over. I was physically emptied, cleared of antidepressants, toxins, and the weight I had been carrying. My body was ready for what came next. The next day, the ceremony continued. Drew repeated the rapé and eye drops, then gave me a ceremonial drink made of cacao and 5 grams of psilocybin mushrooms. I put on a blindfold and headphones. Music played. Ambient sounds, drumming, occasional chanting. Drew beat a drum in the room, rang chimes, and sometimes chanted softly. But for the most part, he just sat nearby in stillness. At first, I felt very little. I kept lifting the blindfold and saying, I'm not feeling anything. Each time Drew simply replied,
Just be.
I didn't understand. I was looking for something external, something obvious. But he offered no explanation, just those 2 words.
Just be.
Eventually, Drew offered me MDMA, which I accepted. That changed everything. Within minutes, I was overtaken by a powerful vision. I saw and felt my mother's unconditional love surrounding me, pure, unwavering, and constant in a way I had never experienced before. It shattered decades of emotional barriers. I dropped to my knees and screamed out, "Oh my God! Oh my God! again and again sobbing and trembling as years of pain were released. I reached for Drew. He's huge, muscular, 6'4", and he gets in this position and he grabs me and cradles me. And I just felt all my anger, like everything at work, like the people at work, everything just lifted. No more. The anger at my mother, anger at my brother, anger at the whole situation at work, it all just lifted. It was gone. This giant of a man cradled me like a child and whispered, "You are loved. You are loved." And for the first time in my life, I believed it. I felt it in every cell. It was a rebirth. For 2 weeks after, I felt emotionally invincible. I truly thought I was healed forever. But of course, that wasn't the end of the story. It wasn't my final experience with depression, but it was a line in the sand. I would never be the same.
I woke up the next day feeling physically in a way that I just haven't felt in so long. I felt so good. I saw my mother in a whole new way. And that, I realized, was the core of everything that I was able to heal with regard to, like, my friends at work, leaving work, and retirement not being like a celebration, which was an issue for me. I still had to work through that stuff over the next year and a half, but I knew what I needed to work on. And then I just started reading all kinds of like books. There's an author named Eckhart Tolle, who's a very spiritual writer. There's Michael Singer is another one. So I just kind of delved into that world. I found Buddhism. I participate in a Buddhist community locally here. I have a daily meditation practice. All of this came because of the psychedelic mushrooms, and all of those other spiritual practices has allowed me to see and understand, for example, my mother's, the generational trauma of having a grandmother who was...
Michael's grandmother grew up in poverty on the Lower East Side of Manhattan and had to commit her mother to a psychiatric hospital.
And I started going, wow, if my grandmother had to do that and then raised my mother, who my mother will give you a laundry list of all the things my grandmother did to upset my mother. I was able to forgive everything. That was the catalyst for healing on every level. It made me wonder what kind of conditioning I did to my own kids. And then I started seeing that, like why my son gets pissed off at me for something. And I realized, oh, that's because I behaved in a certain way, and I could connect those dots to the way my mother acted, but I could see how she got that from her mother and on all that. And you realize it's nobody's fault. It's nobody's fault. People are just doing the best they can. And then all of a sudden, my therapist saying, parents just do the best they can. Like, now I fully get it. And now I have nothing but love for them.
After he did the psychedelics, when I picked him up, I'll never forget this. We went to go get some Chinese food, and we were sitting in the car outside the hotel eating this takeout food.
Are you okay?
I've never felt better in my life.
I thought you might be hungry. We're sort of rolling the dice. It's from one of those under new management Chinese places, but maybe your system is ready for some grace.
Oh, Christ, this is unbelievable. You remember my mom used to make this sort of stuff? The only home-cooked Chinese meal by a Jew. It was the best. She made it great.
Yeah, she lit up when she did it. It really was. I think that might be the first positive conversation we've had about your mom in 15 years.
Do you think I messed up our kids?
Maybe a little. But you know what? Everyone probably does. And it's not too late.
It's been a really beautiful, beautiful process and journey that we're still going through.
I think the key component of my learning through this is I figured out the value of forgiveness. I don't even feel any negativity towards those people anymore because I don't see a reason for that. I understand the situation from a distance now, which makes forgiveness very, very easy.
Hope Lives Here is a production of Voyage Media. The series is produced by Nat Mundell and Deb Benamor. This episode was executive produced by Michael, which is not his real name. This episode was story produced by Sophie Lee. Edited, sound design, and mixed by James Scully. Original music by Derlis Gonzalez. Starring Jonathan Regier as Michael and Rochelle Simpson as Charlotte. If you're enjoying the show, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you're listening, and subscribe now for future episodes.